The city lights twinkled through the foggy window of the cramped studio apartment, but inside, Natasha Pierce felt nothing but darkness. At 24 years old, she had imagined her life would look different by now. She thought moving to the big city would bring opportunities, friendships, and excitement. Instead, she found herself more alone than ever before. The small Christmas tree she had bought from the discount store stood in the corner, its cheap ornaments reflecting the dim light from her single lamp. She had decorated it with hope 3 weeks ago, believing that somehow the holiday season would bring magic into her life. Now it just reminded her of how far she was from home, from family, from anyone who truly knew her. Natasha sat on her bed, which also served as her couch, staring at the plate of instant noodles growing cold on her makeshift table. This was her Christmas dinner. The contrast between the joyful holiday posts flooding her social media and her current reality felt like a knife twisting in her chest. She picked up her phone with trembling fingers. She needed to hear a friendly voice, someone who understood her, someone who cared. Rebecca Stone, her best friend from her hometown, was the only person who really knew the real Natasha, the girl behind the professional smile she wore at the office every day. The message that changed everything. Through blurry tears, Natasha opened her voice messaging app. Her thumb hovered over the record button for a moment before she pressed it, and then everything came pouring out. Her voice cracked as she spoke about the overwhelming loneliness, about how she smiled at hundreds of people every day at work but went home to complete silence. She talked about the struggle to afford rent, about skipping meals to make ends meet, about feeling invisible in a city of millions. She described the ache of watching her coworkers leave early on Christmas Eve, rushing home to their families, while she stayed late because she had nowhere else to go. She confessed her fear that she had made a terrible mistake leaving her hometown, that perhaps she was not strong enough for this life after all. The words tumbled out between sobs, raw and desperate and achingly honest. When she finished recording, Natasha wiped her eyes and hit send without double-checking the recipient. She assumed her muscle memory would guide her finger to Rebecca's name, as it had countless times before. The message disappeared into the digital void, and she collapsed back onto her pillow, emotionally drained. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Relief washed over her. Rebecca always knew exactly what to say. But when Natasha looked at the screen, her blood turned to ice. The message was not from Rebecca. It was from Vincent Harlow. Her boss. The CEO of the entire company. The man whose name alone could make seasoned executives nervous. "Where are you right now? Send me your address. Come here immediately." Panic and confusion. Natasha's hands shook so violently that she nearly dropped her phone. She scrolled up in horror and saw the devastating truth. The emotional, vulnerable, desperately sad voice message she had just recorded had gone to Vincent Harlow, not Rebecca Stone. Their names had been next to each other in her recent contacts, and in her tear-blurred state, she had selected the wrong one. This was a catastrophe beyond imagination. She had just sent her billionaire boss a recording of herself crying about being poor, lonely, and struggling. She had revealed weakness, instability, and unprofessionalism to the one person who held her entire career in his hands. Her mind raced through the terrible possibilities. He would fire her immediately. He would think she was mentally unstable. He would tell everyone at the office, and she would become a laughingstock. She would lose her job, her apartment, everything she had worked so hard to build in this unforgiving city. With shaking fingers, she typed out a frantic apology. "Mr. Harlow, I am so incredibly sorry. That message was meant for my friend Rebecca. I must have clicked the wrong name. Please forgive me and ignore it completely. Merry Christmas." The 2 blue checkmarks appeared instantly, showing he had read her message. Then she saw the typing indicator appear and disappear several times. Each second of waiting felt like an eternity. What was he writing? How was he phrasing her termination? When his response finally came, it was not what she expected at all. I understand the message was not intended for me, Natasha. That does not change my instruction. I need your address right now. Natasha stared at the message in complete confusion. Why did he want her address? Was he sending security to collect her work badge? Was this some new form of corporate humiliation? But what choice did she have? Refusing a direct order from the CEO would certainly result in termination. At least if she complied, there was a small chance she might be able to explain herself, to salvage some dignity from this disaster. She typed out her address and pressed send, feeling like she was sealing her own fate. His response was immediate and commanding. A car is coming to get you. Be ready in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Natasha jumped up and ran to her tiny bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face, trying to reduce the redness and swelling from crying. She changed out of her worn pajamas into the only decent dress she owned, a simple navy blue piece she had bought for job interviews. She brushed her long brown hair and applied minimal makeup, trying to look presentable despite feeling like her world was ending. Exactly 10 minutes later, her intercom buzzed. She grabbed her phone and keys with trembling hands and made her way downstairs. Parked in front of her modest building was a sleek black luxury sedan, the kind of vehicle she had only seen in movies. A professional driver in a crisp suit stepped out and opened the rear door for her without a word. Natasha slid into the back seat, sinking into leather so soft it felt like a cloud. The interior smelled expensive, a subtle mixture of fine leather and something else she could not identify. She felt completely out of place, like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. The drive took them across the city, away from her neighborhood of small apartments and crowded streets, toward the exclusive district where only the wealthy lived. The houses grew larger, the walls higher, the Christmas decorations more elaborate. Natasha's anxiety grew with every passing mile. The week between Christmas and New Year passed in a strange fog for Natasha. After that unexpected evening at Vincent's mansion, where she had shared an intimate dinner with her boss and met his adorable daughter Lily, she returned to her small apartment feeling like she had stepped through a portal into another dimension and back again. Vincent had been kind, surprisingly vulnerable, and completely different from the intimidating CEO she saw at work. They had talked for hours about loneliness, pressure, and the unexpected challenges life throws at people regardless of their bank accounts. He had listened to her stories about growing up in a small town with genuine interest. She had seen him smile, really smile, when he talked about Lily's first words and her obsession with butterflies. But now, back in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the office, Natasha convinced herself it had all been some sort of fever dream. Men like Vincent Harlow did not form connections with women like her. He had probably just felt sorry for her, a charitable impulse on Christmas Eve. She was determined to forget the whole thing and return to being invisible, safe in her anonymity. The company operated on a skeleton crew during the holiday week, and Vincent never appeared. Natasha told herself she was relieved. Facing him after that night would be unbearably awkward. She processed paperwork, answered phones, and counted down the days until everything returned to normal. The first Monday. When the new year began and the office roared back to full capacity, Natasha felt the familiar rhythm of corporate life resume. People rushed through the lobby with coffee cups and briefcases, already stressed about quarterly goals and project deadlines. She smiled at everyone who passed her desk, just as she always did, blending into the background like wallpaper. Then Vincent arrived. The atmosphere in the building always shifted when the CEO was present. Conversations became more professional, laughter more restrained, movements more purposeful. He strode through the lobby in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his presence commanding attention without him having to say a single word. Natasha kept her eyes down, focused intently on her computer screen, praying he would walk past without noticing her. But she felt him slow down. She sensed him pause. And when she finally looked up, his eyes were directly on her. It was just a moment, barely 3 seconds, but everyone who paid attention to office politics noticed. Vincent Harlow had acknowledged the receptionist. His expression had softened almost imperceptibly. And then he continued to the elevator, leaving a wake of confused whispers behind him. Gabrielle's notice. 3 desks away in the open office space, Gabrielle Mason saw everything. At 32, she had climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency and strategic charm. She was beautiful in a calculated way, with perfectly highlighted hair, designer clothes that walked the line between professional and alluring, and a smile that could shift from warm to cutting in an instant. Gabrielle had set her sights on Vincent Harlow 2 years ago, not just as a boss but as a conquest. She had positioned herself strategically, volunteered for high-visibility projects, and made sure he knew she came from the right social circles. In her mind, becoming Mrs. Harlow was not just a romantic goal but a logical career move. She would be the perfect corporate wife, the ideal mother to Lily, the flawless partner for a man of his status. The fact that Vincent showed no romantic interest in her was merely an obstacle to overcome, not a rejection to accept. But this morning, she had seen something that made her blood run cold. Vincent Harlow had looked at the receptionist, that nobody from some backwards town, with recognition. With familiarity. Gabrielle pulled out her phone and quickly composed a text to her assistant. Find out everything about Natasha Pierce. Background, education, family, social media, everything. I want it by end of day. The summons. At 10:30, Natasha's email pinged with a message that made her heart stop. It was a meeting invitation from Vincent's executive assistant. Subject line, Strategic Planning Session. Location, Executive Conference Room. Time, 11 o'clock. Natasha read it 3 times, certain there had been a mistake. She was a receptionist. She did not attend strategic planning sessions. She did not even know what strategic planning meant beyond the general concept. This had to be an error in the system. But when she called the executive assistant to confirm, the woman's voice was crisp and certain. Mr. Harlow specifically requested your presence, Miss Pierce. The meeting begins in 30 minutes. Please be prompt. Natasha felt the eyes of the entire office on her as she stood up. Gabrielle's gaze was particularly intense, a mixture of curiosity and something darker. Natasha smoothed down her simple skirt and blouse, suddenly very aware of how inexpensive her clothes were compared to everyone else heading to that meeting. The executive floor was intimidating even on a normal day. Thick carpet muffled footsteps. Original artwork hung on walls painted in sophisticated neutral tones. The conference room itself was dominated by a massive table made of dark wood that probably cost more than a car. Vincent sat at the head of the table, and he was completely transformed. The warm, tired father she had met on Christmas Eve was gone. In his place sat the legendary CEO, his expression unreadable, his posture radiating authority. Around the table sat the company's top executives, all of them looking at Natasha with varying degrees of confusion about why she was there. A test of courage. The meeting began with discussions far above Natasha's understanding. They talked about market penetration, competitor analysis, and fiscal projections. She tried to make herself as small as possible, hoping that if she stayed quiet enough, everyone would forget she was there. Then Vincent's voice cut through the corporate jargon like a knife. Natasha. Every head turned toward her. She felt her face flush hot with embarrassment and anxiety. Her mouth went dry. This was it. He was going to humiliate her in front of all these important people. Maybe this was his revenge for that Christmas message, a cruel way to remind her of her place. You work at our reception desk, he continued, his tone completely neutral. You interact with clients, vendors, and visitors every single day. You see our company through the eyes of outsiders. We are launching a new customer loyalty initiative, and I want your honest opinion. How accessible is our brand to average people? The room fell silent. Several executives shifted uncomfortably. The marketing director looked offended that a receptionist was being asked for input on his domain. Gabrielle, who had somehow managed to be included in this meeting, stared at Natasha with undisguised hostility. Natasha could give the safe answer. She could say something generic and positive that would not ruffle any feathers. But she remembered Christmas Eve, remembered Vincent saying that honesty was rare and valuable. She remembered the man behind the CEO mask, the one who had listened to her cry about feeling invisible. She took a deep breath and decided to be brave. "With all respect, Mr. Harlow," she began, her voice shaky but growing stronger, "our brand feels untouchable to most people. When clients come here for the first time, I can see the intimidation on their faces. They feel like they do not belong. Our marketing is beautiful, but it speaks only to people who are already wealthy. We sell a dream but make the door seem locked. People want to feel welcomed, not just impressed." The silence that followed was deafening. The marketing director's face turned red. An older executive coughed uncomfortably. Gabrielle smirked, clearly expecting Natasha to be torn apart for such boldness. But Vincent leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Natasha's face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Thank you. That is exactly the kind of perspective we needed." He turned to the marketing director. "Restructure the campaign. I want accessibility and aspiration to coexist. Use her feedback. Coffee and conversation." The meeting ended shortly after, and Natasha practically ran back to her desk, her heart pounding. She had spoken up in a room full of executives. She had criticized the company's approach in front of the CEO. She had either just made the biggest mistake of her career or something had fundamentally shifted. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Co-workers who normally ignored her suddenly asked questions about the meeting. Gabrielle walked past her desk twice, her expression calculating. Natasha kept her head down and tried to process what had happened. At 5:30, just as she was preparing to leave, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "There is a coffee shop 2 blocks west of the office. Meet me there in 20 minutes. Come alone. Vincent." Natasha stared at the message. This was crossing lines, blurring boundaries that should remain clear between an employee and her boss. Every logical part of her brain screamed that she should decline, that this was dangerous territory. But her heart remembered Christmas Eve. It remembered genuine conversation, shared loneliness, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she had found something real in the most unexpected place. She grabbed her coat and headed for the coffee shop, having no idea that this decision would change everything. The coffee shop was nothing fancy, just a small neighborhood place with mismatched furniture and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Natasha arrived first, her nerves making her 10 minutes early. She chose a corner table away from the windows, somewhere private but not too isolated. Her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she had ordered just to have something to do with her anxious energy. Vincent arrived exactly on time, but he looked different again. He wore jeans and a simple sweater under his winter coat, the CEO armor completely stripped away. When he spotted her, his face relaxed into a genuine smile that made her heart skip. He ordered a black coffee and slid into the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I was not sure you would." "I almost did not," Natasha admitted. "This feels complicated." "It is complicated," Vincent agreed. "But I have not been able to stop thinking about Christmas Eve. About our conversation. About how you were the first person in years who did not want something from me, who just needed someone to listen." Natasha felt her cheeks warm. "You listened to me too. You made me feel less alone." They talked for 2 hours, losing track of time completely. Vincent told her about the pressure of inheriting his father's company at 28, about how his ex-wife had married him for his money and left when motherhood became inconvenient. He spoke about Lily with such tenderness that Natasha felt her chest tighten. He was not just a wealthy CEO. He was a man struggling to be a good father while managing impossible expectations. Natasha shared her own story more fully. Growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, where opportunities were limited but love was abundant. She talked about her mother's sacrifice to help her move to the city, about the guilt she felt for leaving, about the crushing loneliness that had consumed her until Christmas Eve. "I see you, Natasha," Vincent said softly as the coffee shop began to close around them. "I have seen you since that night. And I cannot unsee you now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Natasha knew what he was saying, what he was offering, and she knew all the reasons she should walk away. But her heart had already made its decision. The storm begins. Gabrielle Mason sat in her luxury apartment, scrolling through the research her assistant had compiled on Natasha Pierce. Small-town girl, state university degree, no connections, no money, no social media presence worth mentioning. She was exactly what Gabrielle expected, a nobody who had somehow caught Vincent's attention through sheer dumb luck. But luck could be manipulated. And nobodies could be reminded of their place. The next morning, Gabrielle arrived at work with a plan. She had spent years cultivating relationships with board members, executives, and Vincent's father Thomas. She knew how to plant seeds of doubt, how to frame situations to her advantage. Her first stop was Thomas Harlow's office. The patriarch of the Harlow Empire was a man who believed in tradition, appearances, and strategic marriages. He had never approved of Vincent's first wife, considering her too flighty and modern. Now he was pressuring his son to find a suitable partner, someone who understood the responsibilities that came with the Harlow name. "Mr. Harlow," Gabrielle said sweetly, settling into the chair across from his massive desk. "I am concerned about something I have observed. It involves Vincent and an employee situation that could become problematic." Thomas looked up from his papers, his eyes sharp. "Go on." "There is a receptionist, very young, very inexperienced. I have noticed Vincent showing her unusual attention. Including her in executive meetings, texting her outside work hours. I am worried about the optics, especially given the custody arrangement with Lily. If this became public, if people thought he was involved with someone so inappropriate." She let the implication hang in the air. Thomas's expression darkened. "What is this girl's name?" "Natasha Pierce. She has been here less than a year. No credentials, no background that would justify any professional interest." Thomas nodded slowly. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Gabrielle. I will handle it." The confrontation. Natasha had been seeing Vincent quietly for 3 weeks. Coffee shops, walks in the park, one memorable evening at his house where Lily had insisted Natasha read her bedtime stories. The little girl had wrapped her tiny arms around Natasha's neck and whispered, "I like you better than the other ladies Daddy brings home." Even though Vincent insisted there had been no other ladies, their relationship existed in a bubble, separate from work, hidden from scrutiny. Natasha knew it could not last forever, but she had never imagined how violently that bubble would burst. She was called into Thomas Harlow's office on a Wednesday afternoon. She had never met Vincent's father, had only heard about him through hushed office gossip. The man who sat behind the enormous desk radiated cold authority. He did not ask her to sit. "Miss Pierce," he began without preamble. "I am going to be direct with you. Whatever you think is happening between you and my son needs to end immediately." Natasha felt like she had been slapped. "Sir, I do not understand. Do not insult my intelligence by playing naive. Vincent is not thinking clearly right now. He is vulnerable after his divorce, and you have taken advantage of that vulnerability. I do not know what your endgame is, whether you are hoping for money or status, but I assure you it will not work." "That is not what this is," Natasha said, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "I care about Vincent. I care about Lily. You are a receptionist with no education, no family connections, and no understanding of the world my son operates in. You would be a liability to him professionally and personally. I am prepared to offer you a generous severance package if you resign today and cut all contact with Vincent. The offer hung in the air. 6 months' salary, enough to pay off her debts and give her a fresh start somewhere else. All she had to do was walk away from the first real connection she had felt in years. No, Natasha said firmly. I will not take your money, and I will not disappear because you find me inconvenient. Vincent is an adult. If he wants me out of his life, he can tell me himself. Thomas's eyes narrowed dangerously. You are making a serious mistake, young lady. Maybe, Natasha said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But it is my mistake to make. Standing together. Vincent found out about his father's ultimatum within an hour. Natasha had barely made it back to her desk before he was calling her cell phone, fury evident in his voice. My office. Now. When she arrived, he was pacing like a caged animal. My father had no right to speak to you that way. No right to offer you money like you are some kind of problem to be solved. He is trying to protect you, Natasha said quietly. And maybe he is right. Look at us, Vincent. I am nobody. You are you. This does not make sense to anyone looking from the outside. I do not care what it looks like from the outside, Vincent said fiercely. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. I have spent my entire life doing what was expected, what made sense, what looked good to other people. My marriage was a strategic alliance that left me miserable. My entire existence has been about appearances and expectations. And then you sent me that message on Christmas Eve, and for the first time in years, I connected with someone real. Your father will make my life impossible here, Natasha whispered. Then we will go somewhere else. I built this company once. I can build another. Or I can step away entirely. I have enough money that Lily and I could live comfortably for 10 lifetimes. What I do not have enough of is happiness, real connection, genuine love. And I have found that with you. What about Lily? What about custody? Your ex-wife could use this against you. Vincent smiled sadly. My ex-wife signed away her parental rights completely. She sends a birthday card once a year if we are lucky. There is no custody battle to fight. As for Lily, she adores you. She has asked me 3 times this week when Miss Natasha is coming back to read stories. The public declaration. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Thomas had called it specifically to address concerns about Vincent's leadership and judgment. Gabrielle had done her work well, spreading carefully worded doubts among the executives. The plan was clear: pressure Vincent into ending his inappropriate relationship or face consequences. What they did not expect was for Vincent to bring Natasha with him. She walked into that boardroom holding his hand, her head high despite her simple dress and inexpensive shoes. The shocked silence was immediate. Thomas stood up, his face red with anger. Vincent, what is the meaning of this? The meaning, Vincent said calmly, is that I am tired of living my life according to other people's expectations. Natasha Pierce is the woman I am in a relationship with. She makes me happy. She makes Lily happy. And if that is a problem for this board, if my personal life is somehow grounds for questioning my professional competence, then perhaps it is time for me to step down. You cannot be serious, Thomas said. I am completely serious. I have given this company 15 years of my life. I have tripled its value. I have expanded into markets you said were impossible. But I will not sacrifice my happiness or my daughter's well-being to maintain an image that serves no one but your outdated sense of propriety. Gabrielle stood up, her carefully maintained composure cracking. She is using you, Vincent. Can you not see that? She is a gold digger who got lucky. Natasha spoke for the first time, her voice clear and strong. I do not want his money. I did not even want his attention. I sent him a message by accident, and he responded with kindness when he could have ignored me. He saw me when I felt invisible. And yes, I fell in love with him. Not because of his bank account or his position, but because he is a good man and a wonderful father who deserves to be happy." The room fell silent. Several board members looked uncomfortable. One older woman smiled slightly, as if remembering her own battles against expectations. Vincent squeezed Natasha's hand and addressed the room. "I am not asking for your approval. I am informing you of my decision. Natasha will remain employed here as long as she chooses, and anyone who makes her work environment hostile will answer to me personally. If the board feels this is grounds for my removal, then vote. But know that I will not compromise on this." Thomas stared at his son for a long moment. Then, slowly, the anger drained from his face, replaced by something that might have been grudging respect. "You are more stubborn than your mother," he said quietly. "And she was the most stubborn woman I ever knew. It is probably why I married her." A new beginning. 6 months later, Natasha stood in Vincent's backyard, watching Lily chase butterflies through the garden. The little girl wore a princess dress and rain boots, her laughter echoing across the perfectly manicured lawn. Inside the house, caterers were preparing dinner for a small gathering of friends and family. Thomas had come around slowly, though he still grumbled about propriety and appearances. But when he watched Lily with Natasha, when he saw how his son smiled now, even he had to admit that perhaps love was more important than strategy. Gabrielle had resigned shortly after the board meeting, taking a position at a competitor company. The last Natasha heard, she was dating an investment banker and seemed genuinely happy. Vincent came up behind Natasha and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About how my life changed because I clicked the wrong name," she said, leaning back against him. "About how the worst moment of my life turned into the best thing that ever happened to me." "I was thinking the same thing," Vincent said. "I was so lonely that Christmas Eve. I had everything anyone could want except the one thing that mattered. And then you appeared, crying and honest and completely unimpressed by all the things that usually impress people." Lily ran over to them, her small hands cupped carefully. "Look, Daddy. Look, Natasha. I caught a butterfly." Inside her palms, a monarch butterfly rested peacefully, its orange wings folded. "You have to let it go, sweetheart," Natasha said gently, kneeling down. "Beautiful things cannot be kept in cages." Lily opened her hands, and the butterfly took flight, dancing upward into the golden afternoon light. The little girl watched it go with wonder rather than sadness. "It will come back if it wants to," she declared confidently. "Because we are nice to butterflies here." Vincent laughed and scooped his daughter up, spinning her around until she squealed with delight. Natasha watched them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. She thought about the girl she had been on Christmas Eve, alone and crying in her tiny apartment, convinced she had made all the wrong choices. That girl could never have imagined this. A man who loved her for exactly who she was. A child who called her name with joy. A home filled with laughter instead of expensive silence. A family built not on strategy or appearances, but on genuine connection and unexpected grace. She had been invisible for so long, believing she did not matter in a world of important people doing important things. But Vincent had shown her the truth. Everyone matters. Everyone deserves to be seen. And sometimes, the most important moments in life come from the accidents, the mistakes, the wrong numbers that turn out to be exactly right. As the sun set over the city that had once felt so cold and unwelcoming, Natasha smiled. She was home. Not because of the beautiful house or the comfortable life, but because she was loved. Because she was seen. Because she had taken a chance on something that seemed impossible and found that love, real love, was the most possible thing in the world. The butterfly Lily had released circled back, landing briefly on Natasha's shoulder before flying away again. She took it as a sign. Beautiful things always return when they are treated with kindness. And love, true love, finds a way even when the whole world says it should not. The end.